California educates 1/8 of all the students in the United States. Unfortunately, California students rank near the bottom compared with other states in terms of math and reading, and are far behind students from other countries. As a result, California, along with 44 other states, has adopted a new and more rigorous Common Core approach to K-12 education. Whether it is tackling a math problem or analyzing a text, the new Common Core approach encourages students to show how they came up with their solutions and be able to articulate how they think. The overall goal is to promote more critical thinking, rather than merely memorizing answers for a test. Will it work? We'll ask Nancy Brownell, the Senior Fellow for the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education, and John Fensterwald, a reporter with EdSource Today, one of the most respected publications covering K-12 education in California. The Common Core, a necessary course correction?
Additional funding for the Maddy Report made possible by a grant from Paramount Agricultural Companies, growing healthy food for you and your family.
From Fresno, the Maddy Report, with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Kempler.
Improving K-12 education is a top priority for Governor Brown. What are the proposals that he's changing in terms of what's going to be taught and how it's going to be taught? We're fortunate to be joined by Nancy Brownell, a Senior Fellow for the California Department of Education and the California Board of Education, who's leading the effort on transitioning California's K-12 schools to the new Common Core. So welcome to the Maddy Report, Nancy.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Generally, what are the Common Core standards and how were they developed?
Standards really define what students need to know and be able to do in the preschool through K-12 classrooms. And the Common Core standards really grew out of the 1997 standards that the state of California had adopted. Only 48 states really looked at the development of them. And in our education business, we generally start with literacy and mathematics as being really critical standards. And for each grade level, we define the expectations, and then schools and districts have a chance to develop their programs around those standards.
You know, I don't want to get into the weeds here too much with folks, but can you give us a little detail on the Common Core and how it's impacting math, let's say?
Mathematics is a kind of interesting picture right now. There are the content standards. Each grade level defines simple things like addition, subtraction in the younger grades, up through algebra, linear equations at the older. And we have a set of math practices that really try to help students understand how do you think like a mathematician? How do you use tools, use problem solving? And that is really a big change. And so we're asking kids to both learn and know concepts and skills and to explain their thinking and how they got their answer in mathematics.
They just can't write down a number, they're going to have to show how they got there.
Yes, show your work.
I better tell my daughter who's in second grade that she's going to have to show her work. You know, what about the English standards for the Common Core? How are they different?
English is still about reading, writing, listening, speaking, collaborating on research projects. The emphasis, though, is trying to say, let's have students read literature and let's have them also read informational text, science, history, biology. And we want them to have more what we call text complexity. One of the ways that kids really become much more fluent readers is sort of grappling with ideas in what they're reading. So we still want to teach reading well at the early grades. We want children to learn the sound symbol system and move on to more complex reading. So there's a lot more reading of information and a lot more writing using evidence from what you're reading.
So these are pretty big changes. So here's the question, why? Why was it felt that we had to move to the Common Core?
Well, California's been on an interesting journey. I'm a longtime educator. I've been educator in the state for 40 years. When I first started, we talked about minimum proficiencies. Then we moved in the 80s and 2000s to proficiency specifically, and now we're trying to say, how do we prepare kids to be college and career ready? And so the implications are we want kids to be successful in the world in which they're going to live, and we have to really build on those early standards and ask kids to do more critical thinking, more problem solving, more real world applications, and that's what these Common Core standards are about. Okay, so we've got, my understanding is the curriculum for math was approved by the State Board of Education in November of last year. When are the new English standards going to be published? Well, there's sort of a couple things here. The standards were adopted really in 2010. In November, we approved the math framework because the curriculum really is about what are the tools you use, what are the resources you use, what are the materials you use. And right now there are 31 new math programs from which districts will be able to choose the best ones to meet their needs, along with the kinds of things that they're expecting their students to demonstrate. The English language arts framework, this year we're really working on trying to combine English language development for our English learners and literacy skills. And so those resources, fully integrated and aligned with the Common Core, won't be available until 2016. But there are a lot of pieces and resources of materials that districts are using right now based on the old materials that they had.
So what's the deadline for the new Common Core standards to be implemented in every California school?
Well, it's interesting when we think about deadline, when we're trying to, I think the way that we like to think about this is we're actually developing a new operating system for pre-K-12 education. This is a long-term 3 to 5 year process. We'll have field test assessments this spring. The first testing will be in the spring of 2015. So we'll be on this journey for 3 to 5 years as teachers become more proficient in really moving students towards more college and career readiness.
Okay, well, as the Common Core is rolled out in California classrooms, what's being done to make sure that implementation is a success? That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking with Nancy Brownell, the person tasked with the state and with coordinating the new Common Core in California's public schools. So teachers have got to do all this work changing from what they were doing to the new Common Core. Are they going to get instructional materials to help them do that, and when are those going to be adopted?
Yes. There are math materials currently available now. The board adopted some new instructional materials. Districts will be able to choose those that best meet their needs. And additionally, this Common Core effort is really about instructional practice as well. How am I thinking about what I'm doing in my classroom? So while the materials for math are be available, many districts will be piloting and adopting probably this spring. New literacy and English language development materials won't be coming till 2016. There's a lot of current materials that teachers are using in their collaborating with their colleagues to really look at how do I really help students meet the needs that I have in reading and literacy.
So if there's going to be a lag time between setting up the curriculum and then the instructional materials, what are teachers supposed to use in the interim to teach to the Common Core?
Yes. Well, the good news, I think, about reading and writing in content areas is we have science textbooks, we have biology textbooks at the high school. We have information in the content currently right now. And so teachers are using a wide array of resources. One of the advantages of this is a multi-state, 40 states adopting Common Core, trying to build instructional materials. There are a lot of units that teachers have built in other states. There are resources online. There are existing textbooks. We can pull from those. So it's really giving teachers a chance to really think about their planning and their instructional priorities in a different way than they have over the past few years.
I'm sure a lot of companies in these areas are seeing everybody moving to the Common Core. They're rushing into the market with instructional materials, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So what about the state in terms of helping the districts implement the Common Core? What are they doing?
The state really has provided much in the way of resources, guidance. There is a set of professional learning modules that are electronically available. There are 14 really critically key topics. Obviously, with the resources available from the governor's budget on really targeting technology, professional resources.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. There's $1.25 billion going toward professional development and upgrading technology. I understand the professional development because you want to change the way teachers teach, but why technology?
Well, the new assessment systems, which we haven't talked about, are going to be computer adapted. Students are going to be demonstrating what they know about the Common Core on a variety of devices. And so both the connectivity and the capacity to use technology to better teach the content is the priority, and then we'll also be assessing with that. And so some of those funds are being used for technology along with instructional resources, new materials, a whole array of things that really help the teacher have at his or her fingertips a wide range of resources to use to teach their children in their class.
You know, you're seeing a move toward technology even in higher education, online instruction and the rest of it, so where it's coming all the way down to the K through 12 as well. What about testing against the Common Core? When's that going to go into effect?
Right. That's another big change that's underway. We have a Smarter Balanced consortium, one of two consortiums across the state that are developing new assessments. We're a governing state. Beginning March 18th is the first window of testing for schools and districts in California, and students across the state will be field testing the item.
Who's going to be tested?
Students in grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. And they will have both an opportunity to take a literacy test and a mathematics test, but a reminder that the field test is really to test the system and the items. In the spring of 2015 will be the first operational test, where we really have a sense of how students are doing in relationship to individual scores. There will be no scores this spring,
right,
because it's all about testing the test.
Yeah, that was my understanding, that the state's going to be discontinuing the standardized test it's used in the past, as it works toward develop these new tests for the Common Core. But is a break in testing a good idea? Because you've heard some criticism around that.
Yeah. Well, we feel, I think, from the policy, the state superintendent, the governor, the state board, that we were really asking teachers to rethink instruction at a very deep level. And if we were going to still hold them accountable to the old assessments, that's a real tension that I think puts teachers in a very difficult position. So I think the wise choice was, we like to say, we're putting a pause, because we're really transitioning. We're still going to test in science under the old system, and 11th graders are still going to take the early assessment program to give them some college readiness feedback.
Yeah, you can't serve two masters. You can't, yeah,
no.
I understand that. Well, once you begin to test students against the Common Core, can you foresee any situation where the way teachers teach and the way teachers are taught to teach is going to change?
Absolutely, and that is already underway in our teacher preparation programs. Programs align their instructional courses to the content that teachers moving into the field have to teach. And so I think the real challenge of the Common Core standards is we're clear on what students need to know and be able to do. We've had that since 1997, but we've also learned a lot in the last 14 years. So now it's about really managing that instruction. How do you build a classroom that every child has a real rich experience every day across a lot of subject areas? How are you differentiating? How are you providing students with who need extra time and instruction, and partnering with parents to make this happen, because that's the way it's going to happen.
We just have a few seconds left in this segment, but I did want to ask you this. How and when do you think we're going to know whether the Common Core is a success?
Well, I think we're on our way, but it's going to take a few years to really have some good sound data. When we walk into classrooms and we see engaged students at every classroom level, we see excitement and conversation, we see students engaged in complex tasks, that's going to tell us a lot about where we are, and then we will also have assessments and an accountability system.
And then we'll know.
And then we'll know.
Okay, well, I want to thank Nancy Brownell, with the Senior Fellow with the Common Core Systems Implementation Team at the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education, for being here. When we come back, we'll talk with John Fensterwald, who writes a well-respected blog on California education, and get his take on the rollout or the fallout of the Common Core. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're now joined by John Fensterwald, who's a reporter with EdSource Today, which has developed a stellar reputation as a respected source of information in education and research and analysis as well in those issues. Welcome back to the Maddy Report, John.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, what's driving this move to the Common Core?
I think there's a recognition that as we head into the 21st century, that the standards that California has used needed to be updated. They needed to stress some of the skills we'll need in the workplace, critical thinking, particularly the emphasis on writing. It's not an indictment, the fact that California adopted the Common Core standards of California. It's state standards, not an indictment of those, but a recognition that we needed to improve them, and this is one way of doing it. And
we're one of, what, 44, 45 states?
California and 44 states, yes, have adopted it.
How are the teachers responding to this change?
I think of all the folks who are involved in Common Core, I think the teachers are most excited about it. And I think that's for several reasons. One is, under No Child Left Behind, the pressure to do well on the California standards and the multiple choice tests really regimented teaching and put a lot of pressure. It also narrowed the curriculum into focus just on English language arts and math. And that's what the Common Core standards are, although they're broader in involving science and social studies content as well. But it basically frees teachers to go back to doing what they do best. And many of them felt constrained under the California standards and under the narrow tests that we took. And I think it's liberating for teachers.
Well, there's still going to be pressure with tests, I assume.
There will be, different kind of tests.
Okay, what about the students? How are they responding to this change to the Common Core?
I think it's too early to say. I think one hears, anecdotal evidence that there are aspects of it that they find exciting, particularly the problem-solving aspects and the fact that it's not involved as much drill and kill as before under the
So less memorization.
Less memorization. California standards, of which there were many, many standards, were very fact-based, and Common Core, again, stresses more collaboration, writing, teamwork, some of the skills that industries say that they value as we head in the 21st century.
Now, as a parent, this actually got my attention. It says that the Common Core is going to result in more homework probably for students, which means parents are going to probably have more homework to do with their children. How are parents responding to the Common Core?
I think it's, again, a bit early. I think one of the challenges of Common Core for districts will be to educate parents as to what Common Core. I think surveys indicate that parents really aren't particularly knowledgeable about the new standards, and that's one of the challenges, particularly as we get into new tests and the results of those tests.
You're talking about the kill and drill approach before, basically memorization, without spending much time on analysis.
Right.
This is a pretty radical shift then for teachers, this new approach with the Common Core. Do you think we're going to see some rough patches as the Common Core is rolled out?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question for several reasons. Number one is in California we're coming out of a recession, so the legislature last year approved $1 billion for Common Core, but teachers haven't had a lot of training in Common Core. That's the primary need, is to have them trained and working together to learn the new standards. It's a multi-year process, and also the tests that we're going to be taking will be given on a computer. That's a whole new presents a whole new set of challenges.
So the question is enough being done to help teachers be successful in implementing the Common Core?
Again, I think it's a multi-year process, and I think the teachers will say, and I think legislators are hearing it, I think we need another big boost in funding for preparing for the Common Core tests, which begin a year from now. So I think you're going to be advocating another $1 billion or whatever, if their budget allows it in May.
So they gave $1.25 billion last time. You think they might do the same next year?
I think there's definitely a call for it. It's not in the governor's budget yet. There is predictions that there will be a surplus and there will be extra revenue when the May revision of the budget comes.
So what happens to those teachers who were brought in under the old regime, the old system, who may not have the technical competencies to really teach math at a deep level?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be required now under the Common Core.
Right.
What happens to them?
Right. Well, I think it's going to be a lift. It's going to be a challenge, and a different generation that came in only under No Child Left Behind and only knowing drill and kill and multiple choice. They didn't really have to know math concepts, particularly to teach math, to get by. And this requires a deeper understanding and an ability to explain to students in ways that they didn't have to before. So I think that some of the experts in this area say that, yeah, it's revealing, in fact, some weaknesses in math teachers' preparation and understanding.
So let's transition to that question about the colleges and universities that actually train our teachers, those who teach teachers. Are they going to have to change how they teach teachers?
Absolutely, they will. And I think it's going to be a challenge for them because the teachers may not be well-versed, won't be well-versed in these standards, and so it'll take some time for them too. Whether CSUs can respond quickly enough, I think, is one of the open questions.
Okay, well, when we come back, what impact will the Common Core have on those K-12 test scores? That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking with John Fensterwald, reporter with EdSource Today. Well, a lot of people want to know, this move to the Common Core, what impact is it going to have on student learning, and what impact is it going to have on student test scores?
Right. Well, let's deal with test scores first. The first tests that will count will be in next year, 2015. And there'll be a number of challenges one is technology. Will schools be able technologically to give students tests on computers? That's one we don't know. The other thing is, will students be able, young students be able to do the keyboard skills to be able to do it? And if they don't, are you judging them on what their keyboard skills, or are you judging on their knowledge? So it's going to take a while to figure it out. The other thing is that it will take several years in order to look at the scores and figure out how students are doing. What you shouldn't do, or what you actually can't do by state law, is to look at how you're going to do on the Common Core tests, which are technically called the Smarter Balanced tests for Common Core. You can't take the results of that and then compare it to the old California state test. That you can't do that. First of all, it's bad. It's inappropriate to do, comparing two tests. But the law
says you can't do it.
Law says you can't do it. And so it's a brand new game. So it will take several years in order to get a sense of what students are learning.
So right now I think they're doing pilot exams, right, to kind of check out this new Common Core test, see if it works, and then the full rollout is in 2015, you were saying.
Right.
What about this idea of kind of not reporting the results of those pilot tests for a year? Kind of flying blind in a way. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's a necessary idea, because the point of doing a field test or a pilot test is to perfect the test. It's not to bring results for individual parents. The point of a field test is to develop the questions and to figure out how to prepare the first test. So it would be invalid and inappropriate to give parents the results of the field test, which students will take starting March through May throughout California.
Not every student, though.
Well, that is actually, California is unique in that in its seeking from the federal government approval, it promised that every student would take the field test for Common Core. California is unique in that respect, and it's been arguing with the federal government over that for a number of months.
But they will or will not have every student take that test?
They will.
They will.
California has...
Most states do not.
Most states only test maybe 10 or 20% of students on the field test, and the other students test their state standard tests, as they have done before. California made the decision, hey, we're moving to new standards. They're very different from California standards. We need teachers to focus on these tests. We also need a field test so that we can see whether we have the bandwidth and the computers. We need to work out all these problems.
I want to ask you about, you were talking about some of the issues that we're going to confront with the testing, and one is computers.
Yes.
There's assumption that every student is computer literate.
Yes.
That may or may not be true. Also, keyboard skills. Are these the kinds of things that they're worried about as they roll out the new Common Core testing?
Yeah, I think we'll see. That's one of the advantages of doing a field test this spring, is we'll see those problems. There will be lots and lots of problems in many districts in terms of the rollout of, but that's good. We're going to see them now in 2014 to know what we need to do in 2015. And there is also an out. Next year, under the rules of Smarter Balance, you can take paper and pencil tests for 3 years, but the consortium that developed this test is really discouraging it, and California's discouraging it. But as a fallback, if you don't have the technological capacity, your kids can take paper and pencil tests.
The answer might be obvious, but I'll ask the question anyway. Why move to a computer test? Why not have either a computer test or a, fill in the box paper test, paper and pencil test? For a number of reasons, and one is that the questions are actually more challenging that are better presented on a computer. Some of them, not just multiple choice, but there'll be writing tests, and there'll be other complex problems that are best done via computer. And the other thing it's technical, it's called computer adaptive. So that when you take when you begin taking this test, given the answer that you give, if it's correct, it will direct you in one set of questions. If you don't get it right, it will direct you into another set. And so the questions are oriented to your knowledge. And so the result is that the students will be able to, the test will show where those students are much better than before. It's a brand new way of approaching standardized tests. Do educational experts expect scores eventually to go up, down, or stay the same? Well, I think we can go back and there's a lot of worry about the results on these initial tests for Common Core. But if we go back to the California standards test back 12 years ago, 14 I forget, so those tests were the scores were quite low. And over time we saw a great increase in progress. And I think you can expect the same with Common Core. So last question. where's the consensus here? Is the consensus that this is going to actually improve educational outcomes in California, the move to the Common Core?
I think that the standards are good. The tests are better tests than we had before. I think, you know, we're going to have to wait several years to see those results. There may be indications along the way, and we have to look at ways that we can evaluate it other than simply the standardized test scores from Smarter Bounds. You know, we've got to look at other ways to evaluate what we're doing to make that determination.
I guess, well, hopeful.
I'm optimistic.
Optimistic is a good way to end it. Well, thank you, John Fensterwald. He's an editor, a reporter with the EdSource Today, and Nancy Brownell, Senior Fellow with the State Department of Education and State Board of Education. If you want to stay current and up to date with state and local politics, you can sign up for our free e-newsletter, The Maddy Daily, by logging on to our website at maddyinstitute.org. And now, another perspective.
Today in California, we can't imagine what the jobs of tomorrow will look like. But we do know that our students need to be prepared to think on their feet, to communicate well, and to problem solve on the important issues of the day. It's important that California equip our students with the 21st century learning skills that they will need to compete in a world economy. Our students need to have the learning and work experience strategies to be successful. An important first step is the Common Core state standards. These standards provide a roadmap. They're research-based, rigorous, and internationally benchmarked. Parents can find out about the standards for each grade level in English language arts and math. California State PTA believes that our students, in order to successfully achieve later in life, need to be equipped with these 21st century skills. Skills such as creativity, communication, collaboration, and problem solving. We believe that our students deserve to be college and career ready, and all parents want their students to be successful. Now's the time for parents and educators to engage, to find out more, not just about the standards, but also about the assessments and tests that will accompany them. For more information and to view a parent guide to student success, visit the California State PTA website.
The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the Maddy Institute, the California Channel, Casey, or Valley PBS. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the points and opinions shared in the Maddy Report, visit our website at valleypbs.org/Maddy. This is Mark Kepler for the Maddy Report. Thanks for joining us.